This happened to me in the summer of 2020. I was 24, living alone in a small rental house just outside of town. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere, but it felt close. Fields on one side, woods on the other. The nearest neighbor about 200 yards down a dirt road that turned to mud whenever it rained. The house sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, half hidden behind oak trees that creaked whenever the wind picked up. That night, a thunderstorm had rolled in around 9 p.m. The local weather channel said it would last until morning. I remember because they'd mentioned record-level lightning activity, and I laughed at how dramatic that sounded. By 10 o'clock, the laughter was gone. The first raindrops hit my living room window like pebbles. I muted the TV and listened. It always started soft, gentle taps, then heavier thuds, then a wall of water. Within minutes, thunder was rumbling so hard the glass in the picture frames vibrated. My Wi-Fi cut out, so I shut the laptop and boiled water for tea. The smell of damp wood drifted in through a small draft by the kitchen window. The house was old, built in the 70s, with those thin windows that never quite sealed. The power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. The only light left came from the small orange candle I'd lit earlier just for scent. I watched its flame sway each time the thunder shook the air. I remember standing there for a moment just listening. The storm was deafening, yet somehow there were seconds of deep silence between the thunder, like the world was holding its breath. I grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight. I wasn't scared, not really, but that kind of darkness makes you feel small. I walked into the living room, shining the weak phone light at the walls and ceiling. Lightning flashed outside, bleaching everything white for a split second. In that moment, I could see the outline of the porch through the window, and then darkness again. That's when I heard it. 3 slow knocks at the front door. I froze. At first, I thought it was just the wind or a branch hitting the wood siding. But then it came again, 3 dull thuds evenly spaced. My stomach dropped. Nobody in their right mind would be outside right now. The rain was coming down in sheets. The gravel road out front was probably flooding. I called out, "Who is it?" Silence. Only the rain in the gutters. Another flash of lightning filled the room, and for a heartbeat I saw something outside. A shape on the porch, faint and still. I blinked, waiting for the next flash, but it didn't come soon enough. When it finally did, the shape was gone. I felt that creeping sense of being watched. I could almost feel eyes on me through the thin glass beside the door. I backed away and texted my friend Evan, who lived a mile down the road. "Someone might be outside my house. Power's out. Can you come?" The little sending circle spun forever before finally delivering. I kept my phone light aimed toward the door. The rain was so loud now it was hard to tell if I was hearing footsteps or just the storm. I decided to check the back door, half to make sure it was locked, half to convince myself I was overreacting. That door had a small window facing the yard. I crept toward it, trying not to breathe too loudly. Lightning flashed again, bright enough to light up the whole yard, and I swear I saw someone standing at the tree line, maybe 20 yards away. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. Then thunder hit a second later, so loud it rattled the dishes. When I looked back, the yard was empty. I locked the door and every window I could reach. Then I grabbed a kitchen knife and sat in the middle of the living room, where I could see both doors. Every few seconds, lightning would flash, and each time I half expected to see someone staring in. About 10 minutes crawled by. Then headlights appeared at the end of my driveway. Relief hit me hard. I thought it was Evan. But as the lights got closer, my relief turned to confusion. It was a truck, not his small sedan. An older model, maybe late 90s, with a rumbling engine you could feel in your chest. It stopped right in front of the gate. The engine idled for maybe 30 seconds, then shut off. No one got out. I crouched behind the curtain, peeking out just enough to see the faint outline of the cab. The windows looked tinted black. The rain was coming down so thick that the headlights turned into hazy orbs of light. Then, suddenly the horn honked once, short, sharp. Like a signal. I jumped so hard the knife clattered onto the floor. Right after, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Evan. "On my way. 5 min out." Meaning whoever was in that truck wasn't him. Another flash of lightning, and the truck's headlights came back on. It reversed slowly, then turned around and disappeared back down the road. I stayed there, frozen, until I finally saw Evan's headlights a few minutes later. He ran up to the porch drenched, holding a flashlight. We searched the property together. The rain had turned everything to mud, and there were footprints everywhere, bare ones scattered across the porch boards. Some small, some larger, like a man's. Evan called the sheriff's office from his truck where the reception was better. They said they'd send a deputy as soon as the worst of the storm passed. We waited inside, lights flickering as the power tried to come back. Around 1 a.m., the rain finally started to ease. The deputy pulled up about half an hour later, shining his spotlight over the trees. He was calm, friendly, clearly used to weird calls on stormy nights. He looked around the porch, then followed the muddy prints to the side of the house. They stopped near the tree line where I'd seen that figure earlier. He said it was probably a drunk who got lost, maybe someone from the farms north of here, and told us to lock up tight just in case. He didn't have much else to go on, but one thing he said stuck with me. He pointed at the bare prints and frowned. You see how deep these are? Whoever made them wasn't just standing. They were leaning forward like they were trying to look inside. After he left, Evan decided to crash on my couch. We didn't talk much. We just listened to the occasional roll of thunder and the drip of rainwater from the eaves. Around 3 a.m., I finally dozed off. When I woke up, gray morning light was coming through the windows. The storm had passed, leaving the air thick and humid. Evan was gone. He'd left early for work. But before he left, he texted me, "Bro, there were tire tracks by your gate this morning." Big ones. I went out to look. Sure enough, deep grooves in the mud led from the road to the gate where they stopped. Next to them were faint boot prints leading back toward the woods. I followed them as far as I could until they disappeared into the soft ground. Then I saw something else. Small bare footprints coming from the same direction. Like a child's. That detail made my skin crawl worse than anything the night before. Later that day, the deputy returned to file a report now that it was clear outside. He noticed the same thing I had and took a few photos. He told me they'd drive by over the next few nights just in case. He also mentioned something strange. Apparently, another resident about 2 miles away had called that morning too. Said an old blue pickup had pulled into her driveway during the storm, sat there for a minute, then left without a word. She thought maybe they were checking for downed power lines or something. But she couldn't see a company logo on the doors. That truck matched the one I'd seen. That evening, after cleaning up and finally getting power back, I was sitting on the couch trying to shake off the whole thing when I heard another noise outside. This time lighter, softer. I went to the window and looked out. It was just a branch scraping the siding. But the sight of that wet wood moving in the wind sent a jolt through me anyway. I don't think I slept properly for a week after that. Every flash of lightning made me glance at the door, half expecting to see that figure again. A few nights later, I got a call from the same deputy. He said they'd found a truck matching the description abandoned off a service road 3 towns over. The plates had been removed, and the inside was empty, except for 2 sets of muddy footprints on the seat. They never found out who it belonged. I stayed in that house another month before breaking my lease, early and moving into an apartment in town. The landlord didn't argue. Apparently, the place had a history of strange visitors during storms. I try not to think about it much anymore. But whenever the Weather Channel predicts thunder, I still catch myself checking the locks twice. And if the lights flicker even for a second, I make sure to keep my phone charged and a candle nearby, because I can still hear it sometimes, clear as that first night. 3 slow knocks at the door, perfectly spaced, waiting for me to answer. This happened to me back in 2019. I was 27 at the time, working as a late-night delivery driver for a regional warehouse company. My job meant a lot of long, dark drives, mostly across state lines, through miles of empty road. And that night, one of those roads nearly broke me. It was early September, around 11 p.m. I was about an hour into a delivery run on Route 82, a highway that cuts through nothing but forest and farmland. The kind of stretch where, if something happens to you, nobody would know for miles. The weather had been calm when I left. Then out of nowhere, the storm hit. Rain came down in sheets, thunder shaking the windshield, lightning so bright it made the whole cab flash white every few seconds. My GPS froze, no service. The radio went to static. It was just me, the rain, and a road that wouldn't end. After nearly an hour, I saw a blue highway sign through the storm. Rest stop 2 miles. I figured I'd pull in, wait for the storm to ease up, maybe grab something from a vending machine. When I finally reached the rest area, it was completely empty. Just one other car, an old silver sedan parked near the far end. Its lights were off. No movement inside. The whole lot was lit by a few weak lamps flickering in the rain. I parked under one, shut the engine off, and leaned back for a second, listening to the storm hammer the roof. That's when I heard it. 3 light taps on the driver's window. At first I thought it was the rain, or maybe a tree branch, but then it happened again, louder. I turned, and through the blur of rain I saw a man standing outside my window. He was wearing a dark hooded jacket, drenched head to toe. His face was half in shadow. He bent down slightly, trying to see in. I cracked the window just enough to hear him. He said, "Hey, sorry, my car broke down. Do you have a phone I can use?" "Mine's dead." His voice was calm. Way too calm for someone standing in a thunderstorm. I told him, "There's no service out here." He stared at me for a second, then nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "Figured as much." Then he turned and walked back toward the restrooms behind the building. I locked the doors and sat there, heart pounding. The rain was so loud I could barely think. After a few minutes, I saw headlights flash once at the far end of the lot, the old sedan. Then they went out again. Lightning struck, and for half a second I saw movement. Someone crouched beside the sedan. Then darkness again. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he really was fixing his car, but then I saw something else. A figure, smaller, standing near the trees behind the restroom. Just standing there, facing my truck. Another flash of lightning, and that figure raised an arm, pointing straight at me. Then everything went black again. That was enough. I started the engine and drove straight out of that rest stop, tires sliding on the wet pavement. I didn't slow down for miles. But then I remembered something. My delivery log binder. I'd left it behind on the passenger seat when I stopped to rest. My boss would kill me if I lost it, so I told myself I'd grab it on the way back once the storm passed. It was around 3 a.m. when I made the return trip. The rain had stopped. The air was heavy and quiet, but when I pulled into the rest area again, something was wrong. The street lamps were off, all of them. The place was pitch black except for my headlights. The silver sedan was still there, same exact spot. I parked and got out, flashlight in hand. The ground was slick and muddy from the storm. As I walked closer, I saw the sedan's tires, and all 4 flat. The windows fogged up from the inside. I shined the light through the glass, and my stomach dropped. A man was sitting in the driver's seat, pale, lifeless, eyes open. I stumbled back and called 911. This time, I had 1 bar of signal. The dispatcher told me to stay inside my vehicle until help arrived. As I waited, I saw something else. Footprints. 2 sets, leading from the sedan toward the tree line, 1 set large, 1 smaller. When the deputies arrived, they confirmed it. The man in the car had been dead for at least a day. They searched the area but found no one. When I told them what I saw earlier and the man knocking on my window, the smaller figure pointing from the trees, they looked at each other for a moment. Then one of them said something I'll never forget. "Sir, this rest area's been closed since 2017. There's no power running to these lights, no reason for anyone to be parked here." I didn't believe it until I checked the state website later that week. It showed the exact same rest area, overgrown, crumbling, abandoned for years. Every detail matched. Except in my memory, it looked perfectly maintained that night. I've done hundreds of delivery runs since then, but every time I see lightning, I pull over and wait. Because sometimes, when the sky flashes white for a second, I swear I still see that man's face behind the glass, and someone smaller, standing right behind him. This happened about 6 years ago, when I was still living with my parents in a small town in northern Pennsylvania. Our house sat on the edge of a wooded area, about a mile outside of town. It was quiet, private, and honestly, a little too isolated when the weather got bad. That summer, we had one of the worst thunderstorms I've ever seen. It hit just after midnight in late July. The forecast had warned about high winds and possible power outages, but we didn't think much of it. Storms were common up there. That night it was just me and my mom at home. My dad was out of town on a business trip. I was upstairs in my room scrolling through my phone when I heard the wind start howling through the trees. Then came the thunder. long rolling cracks that made the whole house vibrate. Within minutes, the power went out. Everything went black except for the flashes of lightning that lit up my room every few seconds. My mom called up from downstairs. "You okay up there?" I yelled back, "Yeah," and grabbed my phone flashlight. I wasn't scared at first. I actually kind of liked storms. The sound of rain on the roof always felt calming. But this one was different. The thunder wasn't just loud, and it was constant. The lightning was so frequent it felt like a strobe light, and then I heard something else. At first, I thought it was just the wind. But when I muted my phone, I could hear it clearer. A faint tapping sound. It wasn't coming from the roof or the hallway. It was coming from my window. 3 slow taps. Then silence. I froze. My window faced the backyard and toward the tree line. We didn't have any large branches near the glass, and my room was on the 2nd floor. I stood there listening. After about 10 seconds, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. I slowly walked toward the window, shining my light. Nothing. Just rain streaming down the glass, leaves blowing. But when lightning flashed, I thought I saw movement. Something or someone ducking out of sight just below my window. That didn't make sense. There was no ledge outside. The only thing below was the ground, a full story down. I backed away and went downstairs to tell my mom. She was sitting on the couch with a candle lit, trying to call the power company. I told her what I'd heard. She frowned and said, "It's probably a branch or a loose shutter, honey." We went to check just to be sure. The shutters weren't moving, and there were no trees close enough to hit the glass. That's when she pointed at something on the floor near the back door. A small puddle of water. It was right by the doormat, like someone had stepped inside with wet shoes. She thought maybe I'd left the door cracked open earlier, but when we looked, it was locked. The wind outside howled again, and a flash of lightning lit up the backyard. That's when I saw something that made my stomach twist. There was a person standing near the tree line, half hidden by the rain. I only saw them for a second, but I'm certain they were facing the house. I shouted, "Mom, someone's out there." She turned, but by the time she looked, the lightning had faded and there was nothing there. She called the police immediately, but the storm had knocked out the lines. No signal. We locked every door and window, then sat together in the living room with the candle burning between us. The storm raged on for another half hour, and in that time the power flickered twice but never came fully back. Then, a sound came from upstairs, a faint creak, like someone stepping on the old floorboards in the hallway. We both looked at each other. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. She nodded slowly. We sat frozen for almost a minute. The only sound was the wind and rain, until another creak came, closer this time. My mom grabbed the flashlight and handed me the fire poker from beside the fireplace. We moved toward the stairs slowly. "Hello?" she called out. "Is someone there?" No answer. The thunder cracked again, shaking the windows. Then we heard something else, a soft dragging sound from upstairs, like fabric scraping across the floor. We stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring into the darkness above us. I swear, in one flash of lightning, I saw movement at the top, like someone's leg disappearing around the corner of the hallway. My mom whispered, "Stay here." But I followed her anyway. Step by step we went up, hearts pounding, until we reached the hallway. The storm made the whole house feel alive. Shadows moving across the walls, wind groaning through every crack. Then from my bedroom, the one with the tapping window, we heard a faint sound. A whisper, not words, just a breath. My mom pointed the flashlight toward the door. The light shook in her hand as she reached for the knob. She opened it and the window was wide open. Rain was blowing in, soaking the carpet. The curtains were whipping wildly in the wind. There was no one inside. We ran to the window and looked out. The storm lit up the backyard again, and for just a second we saw someone sprinting into the woods, completely drenched. My mom slammed the window shut, locked it, and called the sheriff's office as soon as the power flickered back on. They arrived about 20 minutes later, once the worst of the storm had passed. By then, whoever it was was long gone. But the sheriff found something outside just below my window. A small ladder half buried in mud. It wasn't ours, and right beside it, muddy footprints leading into the trees. Bare ones. He followed them until they disappeared into the wet ground. He said it was probably some vagrant trying to get out of the storm, but I could tell he didn't believe that either. The next morning, the sun came out like nothing ever happened. The air smelled clean and fresh, birds chirping. But when we checked the backyard again, something was different. The ladder was gone. The sheriff had left it propped against the fence the night before, planning to collect it later. Now there was nothing there, just a single footprint in the mud where it had stood. That same afternoon, my dad got home. He didn't believe us until he checked the security camera mounted by the driveway. The power had gone out, but the camera's battery backup had captured about 30 seconds before it died. In the last frame, timestamped 12:47 a.m., you could see the outline of a man walking from the side of the house and behind him, something smaller. It almost looked like a child holding his hand, but here's the thing. When the sheriff reviewed it later, he said the smaller shape wasn't holding the man's hand. It was walking behind him, but its shadow was taller, like it wasn't a person at all. I moved out the following year, and my parents sold that house not long after. They said they couldn't stand how quiet it got during storms, and I get it. Because to this day, whenever lightning flashes outside my window, I still remember that tapping sound. Tap, 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 and I still wonder what was standing behind that man when he ran back into the woods.